It's gonna fall.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Where do you live?
I live in Pittsburgh. Yeah.
Oh, how do you like that?
I like it. It's
Is
nice.
it so cold?
Yes, it's freezing.
So have you ever lived in the South?
Yeah. I grew up in
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
You like
Well-
it better than Virginia?
Yeah, I'm here.
She spent peripatetic. She went from North Carolina to good evening.
Colorado.
Different.
Yeah.
Good. Good to see you both.
Birds are flying out like arrows streaming to the paper cup. They slither while they pass, they slip away. Pools of sorrow, waves of joy are drifting through my open eyes, possessing and caressing. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my
Listen, I know that guy. Thank you.
Nothing's gonna change my world. Images of broken heart which dance before me like a Lost me under like a restless it's only gliding out across the It's gonna change my world. It's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna Sounds of laughter, shades of earth are ringing through my ears, inciting and inviting. Limitless undying love which shines around me like a million suns across the across the universe. It's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my world. Nothing's gonna change my Nothing's gonna change
Missed the Saturday dance. Heard they crowded the floor. Couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore. thought I'd visit the club. Got as far as the door. They'd have asked me about you. Don't get around much anymore. Darling, I guess my mind's more at ease, but nevertheless, why stir up memories? Been invited on dates, might have thought, but what for? Awfully different without you. Don't get around much anymore. Darling, I guess my mind's more at ease, but nevertheless, why stir up memories? Been invited on dates, might have gone, but what for? Awfully different without you. Don't get around much anymore. Awfully different without you. Don't get around much anymore.
Yeah, they really should.
If I could have everyone's attention just for a minute. It's really wonderful to see all of the milling about, but there's no eating happening. Feel free to begin the eating process.
We've been saving it all for you guys.
And it's not been easy.
Did everybody enjoy it?
Every breath you take.
I saw you hitting over the table.
Mother had it covered up.
Every step you take, I'll be watching. Every single day, every word you say, every night you stay, I'll be watching.
Are you
Can you see?
great? Hey, man. How are you?
Every step you take,
every smile you feel. I'll be watching you every single day.
I'll be watching you
Every single day. I'll be watching you every step you take, every move you make, every vow you break. I'll be watching you every single day, every game you play, every single day.
I'll be watching you. Tried before to tell him the feelings I have for him in my heart. Every time that I come near him, I just lose my nerve like I've done from the start. 'Cause every little thing he does is magic. Everything he does just turns me on. Even though my life before was tragic, now I know my love for him goes on. Do I have to tell the story of 1,000 rainy days since we first met? It's a big enough umbrella. There's always me that ends up getting wet. 'Cause every little thing he does is magic. Everything he does just turns me on. Even though my life before was tragic, now I know my love for him goes on. I resolved to call him 1,000 times a day and ask him if he'll marry me some old-fashioned way. But my silent fears gripped me long before I reached the phone, long before my tongue had stripped. Must I always be alone? Every little thing he does is magic. Everything he does just turns me on. Even though my life before was tragic, now I know my life for him goes on. Every little thing he does is magic. Everything he does just turns me on. Even though my life before was tragic, now I know my life for him goes on. Goes on. Something in your voice makes my heart beat fast. Hold this feeling like the rest of my life. If you knew how lovely my life has
That's from Files. It's in there. Isn't it?
Feels like mine.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Is it Randy? Is it?
Well, Randy, yeah.
He never wrote it for something. I don't think I've ever heard Bonnie write it. Yeah. Oh, so we are skipping.
I just put it in your book now because like the alliance after.
Never knew how much I love you. Never knew how much I cared. When you put your arms around me, I get a fever that's so hard to bear. You give me fever. When you kiss me, fever when you hold me tight. Fever in the morning, fever all through the night. Sun lights up in daytime, moon lights up the night. I light up when you call my name, and I know I'm gonna treat you right. When you kiss me, fever when you hold me tight. Fever in the morning, fever up through the night. Everybody's got the fever, that is something we don't know. Fever isn't such a movie. Fever started long ago. Romeo loved Juliet. Juliet, she felt the same. When he put his arms around her, he said, Julie, baby, you're my flame. Thou givest fever. When we kissed it, fever with that flaming dew. I'm a fire, fever gave out burns to me. Now you've listened to my story. Here's the point that I have made. Chicks were born to give you fever. a Fahrenheit centigrade to get you feeling. When you kiss them, fever if you live and die. To your Susan, what a lovely way to burn. What a lovely way to burn. What a lovely way
So Leanna is my day.
to burn.
Okay, now how do I fall over?
Yeah, good luck.
You're singing this?
Okay, you know what? Carve it off, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I am Carrie Dellery. I am president of the board at Hickory Community Theatre, and I want to say welcome. We are here on an incredible evening to celebrate two just amazingly talented, phenomenal people. That we would not be where we are, we would not be sitting here if it was not for these two. First, Charles, where is he sitting? Where'd he go? At the bar, there you go. Charles Jeffers, who is just an amazingly talented man. Gosh, Charles, you've been doing plays longer than I've been alive. But seriously, 50 years of directing plays at HCT as our managing now artistic director emeritus. Thank you for all that you have done and all that you do. And Pam Livingstone, Pam, come up here. Why don't you two come up here? Pam was at the bar. Well, we know where they get inspired. All right, and Pam, 10 years here at the theater, directing plays and just sharing your amazing talent with your leadership and direction. You know, I have been involved with the theater a little less than the 10 years that Pam's been here. I got involved when one of my children decided she wanted to do theater and is now still doing theater and hopes to always pursue theater. And so I must say, we're going to have somebody else share more about Charles because I know more about Pam. But Pam, there is a saying that love is not just a feeling, it's a doing. And I think all of you who know Pam would say that by that statement, Pam loves HCT. I know from what she is paid, and I know from that she does a lot more than that is in her job description, and she is paid for. By taking home, how many hundreds of wigs have you washed?
Over 100.
That's not in her job description as the artistic director, to wash all the wigs. But Pam, you've just done so much. Continue. And your leadership in your artistic direction is phenomenal. It's obvious that you not only love directing, that you love the theater, that you love anybody who has ever done a show with Pam, which I've not had the privilege to. I've only done my one little show, which was really exciting and fun, but I'll be back someday. But that Pam loves her actors. And Mama Bear claws come out if you mess with her actors, and which is a wonderful thing. She is just so talented, and we could not do what we have done without your amazing talent. And you stepped into big shoes, I know. And so again, to be able to step into those shoes, I know it was not an easy transition at times, but you have just shown your love by all that you've done, and we can't thank you enough. And then. I want to call up Jeff Mingus, who is our extraordinaire historian. And that's right. That's right. I'm going to read to you, as Jeff's coming up, the HCT vision statement. And I needed to write it down so I wouldn't forget it. And it says, we intend to create an artistically adventurous environment that attracts and excites diverse members of the community by providing an expanded understanding of life through the art of quality theater. And I think you all agree that with these two, that is exactly what we do.
Good evening, everyone. As you know, I'm Jeff Mingus, and I get to carry on the next portion of this little program. We'll start with Charles, and again, I'm not going to say a whole lot because there are people here that know him better than I do. But what I will tell you is, first off, what hasn't been said about Charles Jeff Jeffers. I even have to give up my name. I defer to him as the real Jeff, and I'm just the other Jeff. We have discussed his beginnings with the Hickory Little Theater. We've discussed the transition to community theater. We could name off the thousands of volunteers, of actors, of friends, and family that he has guided both offstage and onstage. We could discuss his numerous shows and the awards that they have won for HCT under his direction. But tonight is more about saying thank you. And that's what we're here to do, is to say thank you both to Charles and to Pam. With Charles, what an incredible career. 50 years. You know, I hate to say this, but you've been doing plays longer than I've been alive, too. Now, I have to tell you, he has more energy. Even after the 50 years of doing this, he's got more energy than I do. He has more enthusiasm about about plays and the theater than you can imagine. His drive is incredible, and all of this springs from what we just mentioned a little while ago. He loves it, and it's so evident in everything he does, and that's what's incredible. These are the insufficient labels that we attach to his direction and his guidance here at HCT. Today, the theater celebrates 60 years, which is an incredible mark in and of itself, in great part due to this one man's drive and enthusiasm and energy and devotion. At this point, I told you that I didn't know as much as everybody else. There are other people that know more, and so I'm going to bring them up. His two daughters, Ellie Hall and Tina Batson, and they have a few comments.
Come on now. All right, well, first of all, let's say, yeah, I do need the reading glasses for later.
Not too bad.
All right, first of all, I want to say, her plane was late today, and so what we were going to practice this afternoon hasn't happened.
It's called improv.
Yeah, it's called improv. It's called winging it. All right. First thing is, I was asked by the lovely Mr. Mingus, who I adore, what was the goal and the vision that Dad had 50 years ago when he started it? And I thought, I don't know. So, no, I called him. Yeah, what was your vision?
I'm asking you this now.
And you know what? The vision in 3 simple words. And this is a direct quote. Butts in seats. It was all about, let's just make enough on this one that we can put the next one up. Let's make enough on this one that we can put the next one up. Let's sell season tickets, which over the years obviously has been done tremendously. What else? what are we going to talk about?
Oh, well, they wanted to know some funny things.
Oh, funny things. Funny things. Okay. Paybacks. No. It's not really. Well, there was Pretty Boy the Goat, who
Yes.
was in Mr. Rogers, who decided on opening night, Roberts, thank you. That was my husband correcting me. Mr. Robert, who on opening night decided he would make his entrance very gracefully, center, turned his rear end downstage, and let fly. And if I recall, Charles Steele actually put it in his review. How lovely the goat crapping was.
You just go with the flow. you
Yeah,
know?
seriously.
And so many things, I mean, over the years as kids, like when Mom and Dad were rehearsing Mary Mary in the basement at home, and I think I was 7 years old, and Mary Mary's a show where it's a couple and there's a lot of fighting, and I don't know, the rehearsal hall must have been tied up. I don't know why you guys were rehearsing.
Because they couldn't get a
in,
babysitter.
Oh, okay. So instead they leave us upstairs, but anyway, so the phone rings, and at 7 years old, I'm not really understanding what's going on, so the phone rings, asked for Mom and Dad, and I said, I'm sorry, they can't come to the phone, they're fighting in the basement.
True story.
But over the years, it was a wonderful ride, and I can remember thinking, you know, that every family had cast parties all the time. It was so weird to learn that not every family has cast parties all the time.
All right, well, Jeff also asked me to talk about some of what Dad might consider his greatest accomplishments, which basically are 50 years worth.
Been directing plays longer than I've been along, but not.
Now wait, the first show he ever directed, The Boyfriend.
That's right, that's right.
My mother was on stage with me in her belly, so don't you even go there. But oh God, now you got me off track here. I do have a letter, but what's leading up to the letter? Okay, his greatest accomplishments. Too many to name, and our father is way too modest to accept any of it. I will say that I think probably when he directed A Raisin in the Sun, which was the first all-black production done in Hickory during a time of very tense relations, meant a lot to him. The other thing that he will never acknowledge is when the city council decided to name the theater for him. Embarrassed him. No, he's still embarrassed about this. Really. But just to kind of show you the breadth of what Dad's influence and artisticness is, when the theater was named, my mother obviously sent a letter to the one man who was really one of the most influential people in Daddy's lives, who was the artistic director at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego, a gentleman by the name of Craig Knoll. In fact, Craig hired Dad in the early 70s to come out and direct at the Old Globe, which I don't know that all of you know that, but he did. We lost Craig a week ago at age 94, Dad's mentor. But we have a piece of history that I wanted to share in honor of Dad and in memory of Craig, talking about Daddy's accomplishment. So if you'll bear with me to get the
props.
The props. I stole it off his bedroom wall, actually. He doesn't. This is April 10th, 1986. Dear Jeff, well, how about that? You had to do it, didn't you? Talk about one-upsmanship. 50 years of hard work and not even a broom closet named after me. I'm just sitting here thinking how this letterhead would look if it read, the Craig Knoll Theater. I think this event is just wonderful. You deserve every bit of praise that's been bestowed. And it is nice to know that hard work pays off. The pictures are terrific. Mom sending the clippings. What a great memory that moment will be. All the best wishes for continued success. Warmly, Craig. And you do. And we love you. And we're getting off the stage.
One other thing, and that is that Dad has always said, when giving career advice, he's always said, find the thing in life that you love so much to do that you just can't believe people will pay you to do it. Great advice. And I know Dad considers himself to be so lucky to have found that thing in life where he can't believe that people pay him to do. But again, not acknowledging yourself and that you made that happen for yourself. But from all of our perspective, those of us on the stage, in this room, in this community and beyond,
And Mama.
and Mama, are the lucky ones for that, Dad.
We love you.
Okay, now y'all know why I didn't do that. Moving forward, I have one word to say to you. Retirement! It was inevitable. We've talked about his great career, but, you know, at a point, we all want to just take some time and slow down a little bit, and this is what we were presented with 10 years ago. And I have to tell you, I was only peripherally involved at that point. I knew board members and was directly connected, so to speak, but didn't have to do any of the hard work. I do remember the energy, both positive and negative, that was created by Charles's announcement that he intended to retire. I also remember the full range of emotion that came into play as the theater board attempted to answer the question, who would replace? And more importantly, who could replace Charles Jeffers? So again, for a special remembrance of this time and who would step into that role, I'm going to bring up Steve Austin and let him speak a little bit. And I'll be back in a minute.
I don't know that I can do this.
Need some direction.
I don't want that. They taught me to project. How's that? But I did write notes because actually Jeff called me or asked me a couple of weeks ago to write something, and he said, I need to see what you're going to say. I need to see what you're going to say.
I got to say it about 5 minutes ago.
No, but it actually goes back 11 years ago, this time of year. 11 years ago, think back, it was a different time. We could go to the airport without getting undressed. There was plenty of employment. It was a different world. And I was the HCP board president. Now, that's a frightening thought. But we had a good year. But about this time that year, I got a phone call at work from Tina. Daddy needs to see you now. At your convenience. And I came to his
I'm
office.
never going to speak to you again.
And I came to his office like an obedient board president. only to have him announce to me that he's retiring at the end of the following year. Because the following year was the 50th anniversary. At that point, the board put together a search committee. It was John Watts, Dow Greer, Al Spainhour, myself, John, am I leaving someone out?
You remember to give me a chance.
I know.
Yes, he left her out.
Okay, I'm like John, I don't remember another face at the table. So, and thanks to Dow Greer, who I wish could have been here tonight, he was actually savvy enough to, at that time, be on the internet worldwide. To have connections, because he had been a professional actor, to send out the job description and what we were looking for throughout the world. Dozens, if not hundreds of applications came in. Tina, thank God, was there to help screen them. But it did boil down to a very short final list of 4 or 5 who were flown in from across the country to interview. And the interview process was onerous and difficult. You had 4 or 5 people on there who were not artistic types. We had no idea perhaps what we were asking for, what we were looking for. All we knew we had to deal with this task of trying to replace Charles Jeffers, which was in and of itself difficult. I'll never forget throughout that process, a lot of the questions dealt with money and how to make the money work and this and that and the other thing. John Watts, our own, sitting right there. I'll never forget in Pam's interview, we'd gone through all the business questions. You know, how do you do this and how do you do that? He looked at Pam and said, how would you direct some scene from a play? And I cannot remember what it is.
It was Starbuck and Lizzie, I remember.
Anyway, she looked at John, and if you've been in a Pam show, she looked at John, told him exactly what she would do, and of course the 4 of us just melted at that moment. And at that point, the decision was unanimous, and Pam was to join us the next year. But she brings with us, to us, really a lifetime of her own experience through her education, her experiences throughout the world, and her own talent. Her first show, I don't know if anyone remembers this, Camping with Henry and Tom. Anybody in that show? Anybody remember seeing that show? Not the best show ever written. I was on play reading that year. But Pam came in and did a very good job with it. And since then, we have had show after show after show of just unbelievable quality. Her first year, Shadowlands. That was just such a spectacular show. I could go on. The word I kept coming up, or the phrase I kept coming up with today was, her directing skills, in my opinion, are sublimely not obvious. And I mean that in a way that not obvious. When you see a Pam show, you're not hearing the clunking and clanging and, oh, I have to move over here now because that's my line. And usually you don't see the arms sticking out from the backstage or anything like that. You're thinking, oh, I'm supposed to retrieve a prop now. But what she does, and she focuses on, and any of you that have been in a play with Pam knows she focuses on the play. She wants to communicate the play. She wants to bring the words of the playwright, the story itself, to the audience. And that is her #1 focus. And very much like Charles, and from being on that committee, that search committee years ago, I feel that we succeeded in maintaining that quality. I'm not saying enhancing, I'm not saying replacing, I'm saying maintaining, because the 2 of them work together. They both add to the quality of this organization. They are the quality of this organization. And even as you try to judge someone or evaluate someone who does art, you can't judge or evaluate art. You can't put a number on it. But we can say and look at this board over here. We were all looking at it as we came in. I don't know how many years ago the MTA, the Metrolina Theater Association, started, and Pam sort of enrolled HCT in that on her own. I don't know how that happened. But it's made up of community theaters and colleges throughout this region, from Davidson, Salisbury, Pam, help me out. I don't know how far
South
west.
Carolina, Concord,
Charlotte area.
yeah, I think there are 11 theaters in our category.
Since that time, Pam herself has been named Best Director 3 times. Best Director. I think that's a record. And HCT shows have been named Best Production 4 times. And they range from kitchen shows to the big productions upstairs. So it's not just the big lavish productions that get the awards. It's also the shows in the kitchen, and I think that's very important and part of the mission of HCT. And that's why Charles pushed so hard to get the kitchen open in the first place. That this space is very much important. We're very fortunate to have Pam and someone of her artistic ability in our community. Those of us who, or you perhaps, who have been fortunate enough to go to New York or London or see a lot of professional road shows come through, can walk away from those shows and say, you know what, HCT comes pretty darn close, if not better. And I do agree with that, and I will stay with that as long as I'm involved with HCT. Now I will say on a very personal note, Pam. She's become my very dear, dear friend, and she and I are family. And not too many years ago, after she came here, she decided to buy a house. Now, I'll never forget when asking her about it, she said, no, I want to make this my home. And she brings so much to this community. Now it's up to all of us to keep her here.
Once again, you know why I didn't do that. I only have one last thing to say, and that's what I say best sometimes. Thank you. What?
Can you introduce Jeff and Carol?
I was gonna say thank you.
I can.
Jeff.
Yeah, because we
But we got it's kind of a neat crossroads because Pam's first show was Camping with Pam and Tom, and we got married on that set.
yes.
And, yeah.
We had an outdoor wedding without having to worry about the weather. And then we had our reception down here and had our first dance right about there.
For those of you who do not know who these kind people are, this is Jeff and Carol Hartman. They are here at their request, which I think is an incredible gift to all of us, and so thank you again.
And after that kind introduction, we're going to tear our stuff down so you guys can see a show.